Obama has like a celebration get together. It was at the White House, and it was commemorating Pride Month for LGBT lifestyle. I really don't care one way or the other. I want to say that on the record, that if somebody wants to spend their life with a man or a woman of the same sex, I really don't care. I don't think our government should be involved in that in any way. One of the things that America was founded on was doing things the way you want to without government interference. But I got to tell you, he had a couple of kids up there celebrating it with him and talking with him and giving like a partial speech. I really think that's wholly inappropriate, and here's why. Kids who are that age, these were 9-year-old kids, third graders, really are not, despite what you've been told, are not emotionally or psychologically ready to have a discussion about alternative lifestyles. Lots of people will disagree with me. Some psychologists will. I don't care. I don't think it's appropriate. It doesn't matter that these kids had gay parents. I don't think they're ready for that psychologically to understand the implications of that. Now, that's not to saying that I think that gay couples shouldn't have children or die. Absolutely not. Two gay people can be perfectly acceptable parents for a child, provided that they provide proper parenting skills, just like a heterosexual couple. That's not the issue. The issue is, does a child have the emotional and intellectual depth to understand really what they're talking about? And they don't. Now, I'm going to read from you what some of these kids were said, because there's no way that these kids said this of their own volition. These children had words put in their mouth, which is the second part of why this is offensive. Using a child for a political tool or to promote a particular political agenda is entirely inappropriate as well. It's one thing for a Republican, and they said, well, Bush with kids, that's different. Bush didn't have him come up there and say something along these lines. It would be the same as if Bush brought some kids to the White House to say communism is wrong. I would be just as offended by that. Now, here's what they said. We told the president that we would like him to make some changes this year, Luna said. That's her name. Going on to highlight the aforementioned elements that were included in the note. In addition, for asking Obama to make it harder for bad guys to get guns. That's a quote. The girls also said they wanted more funding for schools. At last, they urged the leader to support same-sex marriage. We asked the president, this is a direct quote, we asked the president for his support for gay marriage because we have two moms and they are just as good as other parents. They love us a lot. Well, great. I'm glad your parents love you, dear, but really, you didn't write that, okay? I know what intellectual depth you usually get to at third grade, and asking those things, they did not come up with that on their own, okay? So they were given this to say. That, to me, is offensive of the highest order. Believe it or not, I rate that above an IRS scandal or the spying thing. To use a child as a prop is something that leftist cultures do, and it's something that dictators do and tyrants do. It is not something an American president should be doing. I found it offensive. If you want to have a gay pride month and you want to bring a couple of kids with gay parents, that's one thing, to stand there in the back and say, but to put them up there to promote gay marriage, I find offensive. And I got news for you. I have a few gay Republican friends. I would bet that they would argue with me on that one. This is not a gay issue. This is about using children for political purposes. All right? And speaking of using kids for political purposes, L.A., I read this in the news. It was in a number of sites, but I pulled the Breitbart article basically because it was easy to read and print. They are issuing cars, iPads, and cash to good students. But here's how they define of being a good student. Being perfect attendant, showing up. So you get a car. If you went to school, and this is high school. What the hell are they giving high school kids cars for? You you go to school every day. You don't have any sick days. You get a Chevy Sonic, of course Chevy, because GM makes Chevy, right? $18,000 a year. Are they worth these things? Now remember, this is a state that's bankrupt. They have billions of dollars of debt. They just built a school for I don't know, like $200 or $300 million down by the La Brea tar pits. It's called the Robert Kennedy Grammar School, and they're giving away cars. I mean, if I was a taxpayer, I'd be howling. I'd be saying, "Hey, I'm sitting here breaking my ass, paying 50% of my paycheck every month to the friggin' state, and you're giving away cars for going to school?" I mean, it's one thing, I guess, to say, here's an iPad, it's $300, if during the year you get straight A's. Man, I'll tell you, if I got straight A's, you know what I got? A new bike. If I had perfect attendance, you know what I got? A pat on the head. The nuns, when I went to school, if you went to school every day and you had perfect attendance, you know what you got? A little blue ribbon, you know, the kind that you buy in Walmart when you say first prize. That's what you got. And you got to stand up in front of the class, and all the other kids would make rude noises at you. That was it. Now they're giving away cars. This year alone, and let me read this to you. The LA Unified School District system is paid by the state of California only for attendance. That's your first problem. They're compensated and bonused in the system only for attendance. And they figured out what a kid's worth. Every student is worth $32 a day from the state to the system. That means when students skip school, the unionized teachers and administrators pay the price. This year alone, LA Unified missed out on $156 million in funding thanks to students cutting class, including $14 million for kindergartners who didn't show up. I don't know what's worse, the attendance gifts, giving out cars, because they say, you know, or the fact that unions are being bonused or paid based on attendance rather than performance. That's astonishing to me. My attitude is this: if the kid don't show up to school, screw him. You're interested in teaching the kids that go to school the best you can. That's what performance should be based on. If some kid's parents don't bother enough to make sure he goes to school, or the child himself doesn't bother, why should the state? Why should I, as his neighbor, as the guy who's paying the bills, care about a kid who goes, well, people say, well, then he'll end up in prison. Well, that's not true. Steve Jobs never went to school. He was a dropout. He became a billionaire. Now, the issue is how well you teach. And if you really want to solve attendance, hire truant officers, like we did when we were kids. They go out to the kid's home, knock on the door. Hey, where's your kid today? Did you know your kid's not in school today? It's important that he shows up to school. If he doesn't show up to school, he's not going to learn. He's not going to get an education. We're going to leave him back. So it's just the bizarre incentive, as was referred to in Breitbart, is just too much for me to comprehend on a Friday. I think I'll just let it go. The system is so FUBAR in California. It'll never be right. Because I could talk another 15 minutes on this about all the implications of that. I mean, the last thing you want to do is teach little girls that they can properly behave. If an older man asks them to properly behave, they get money, right? All right, I've said enough.